Hello and welcome to Modern Thatch Living again. It's been a while since the last video. That's because we've been working in the barn section here and it hasn't produced video footage that's really very interesting. What I'm doing today is cutting plugs for some of the beams in here. This is because the holes in some of the beams go all the way through to the other side, just underneath the cladding. And you can get quite a cold draft coming through in the winter. So it'd be good to put plugs in, make them look like old pegs that have been pushed into the beams in the past. And usually what I do is I put a little bit of expanding foam in the hole and then put the plug on the front. Anyway, cutting the plugs can be quite tricky. You're basically using a plug cutter in very old oak. And this creates issues. Anyway, let's go outside and we'll talk a bit more about that, and I'll show you how I cut these plugs for the beams. Here we are in the woodshed outside, and I've fitted the plug cutter to the drill. Now the drill can generate a huge amount of torque. And to demonstrate that, I can show you a plug cutter that snapped last week, and it's actually snapped at the weld, and this has happened several times. What occurs is the plug cutter goes into the old oak and it jams, and then the torque from the drill is so high that it actually shears across the weld. And this has happened a couple of times. Now you can imagine, if you're not being careful, what that could do to your wrist. If you were holding this and it jammed, it would move so quickly and be so awkward that you could really do quite a lot of damage here. So you need to be quite careful and thoughtful about the way you use the plug cutter. With smaller plug cutters, I've found it less of an issue. With these big ones, you need to be very, very careful. So anyway, the first thing to do is to clamp your piece of wood down. So here we are with an old piece of oak that I've cut for making the plugs from. And what I've done is I've clamped it down to the bench, and I'm going to stand with a piece of wood resting against my leg. So if the plug cutter gets jammed in the wood and the wood starts to spin because it slips in the clamp for some reason or whatever, the piece of wood will actually be resting against my leg and it can't actually then move. So with the drill bit in the wood, if it jams, the drill is going to be turning the bit that way. So if it jams, what will happen is the drill will try and move in this direction. So if I stand with the drill resting against my body, even if the bit jams, it can't go anywhere. So you do have to use the drill left-handed to do this, but in the long run, that's much more controllable than trying to use it with your right hand and finding that the drill flies off uncontrollably very fast in that direction. And you just can't, it happens so quickly and so fast, you just can't hold it. And it is very dangerous for your wrist, I think. So, just to demonstrate this, I'm going to show you cutting a 25mm plug in this piece of old oak. Right, it helps to have a new battery in there. There we are, we have a plug that can be used to fill out one of the holes in the oak beams. Anyway, there we are. We've cut a number of plugs. Some of them a bit more authentic and old looking than others. And I haven't sprained or broken my wrist, so that's a definite plus in anybody's book. What you can sometimes find is you get a bit of a bruise on the side of your hip. If it has jammed and smashed in, if you haven't been holding it right, holding the drill right up firmly against your hip. But obviously a bruise on the side of your hip you're going to recover from in a couple of days, whereas sprained or broken wrist is going to take you weeks or months to recover from. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed watching that, and I hope to see you again in the future. Goodbye then.